tools that you need, besides obviously a jack stands or some way to get the car in the air, is 13/16 socket to get the wheel lug nuts off, and a torque wrench to put them back on properly, and then a 14mm 9/16 might work as well for those caliper bolts. I used a power wrench, makes it quicker, but you can use a socket wrench. Torque wrench to put those back on properly. You got your brake lubricant, your copper anti-seize and brake parts cleaner spray, screwdrivers or pry bars, 10mm wrench to open up the bleeder valve, bleeder hose to bleed the brakes, bungee cord if you're needing to secure the caliper, and of course some sort of clamp or pressing tool to squeeze down the pistons, and something to keep them from squeaking. You can probably use that on the back of the pads, but I prefer to use that. Because the rear brakes were done so poorly by whoever did them before, I decided I better do the fronts too. So you can do the fronts just by removing one bolt, that bolt, and rotating this up, but I don't think you can get to this hardware here and stuff without removing this bolt. Plus, you typically want to grease inside of here so that they can move freely. I'm wondering if what didn't happen in the rear is they didn't grease it, and so it had shifted over and just wore out that one pad. As like I said, I haven't had any braking issues. The rear was making noise. Since I changed it out, now there's no more noise. So the problem was probably a greasing problem. Like I said, whoever did it before didn't look like they knew what they were doing. So we will see. Mine is a 14mm. Take a screwdriver or something to pry so that you can rotate that away. Alright, I gave up on trying to rotate it, and I pulled the upper mounting bolt, and that way you can slide it out of there. That's the bleeder valve. I'm going to go ahead and spray it with some brake clean, wipe it down, and then crack it open and put a hose on there. Once it's open, I will try to compress that piston a little bit. It's right there, barely visible. And if I'm successful, fluid will come out of there, the piston will compress, and then I'll be able to get this caliper off of here. Keep wrestling with it, you can eventually get it to rotate up and out of the way, and that way you don't have to hang it from anything. I had to use 2 pry bars to get enough leverage to slide that off of the bottom, and then once it came off the bottom, then it finally rotated up. And then the pads should just slide out. You see that? They're definitely not new. They still have a little bit of life, but not that much. You want to replace the hardware so that the pads can freely move. You see how it's oriented on there. I'm a big believer in putting the copper anti-seize on the moving parts, that you can see how much. Like I said, it's just enough to coat that area there. And just like with the rears, I'm using the disc brake quiet on the backs. That should keep them from squealing. Nice thing is these are all interchangeable. There's not a right side, left side, inside, outside, so just grab two and put them on. Then we need to fully compress the piston, so I put the bleeder hose back on. I've opened up the bleeder valve, and then we'll just take a pad and some sort of squeezing tool. It should compress the piston and just push the fluid into the bleeder valve instead of back up into the master cylinder. Alright, I'm going to say that even though you can technically just flip them up, it's way easier to just go ahead and completely remove it and just tie it down like I've got. You see these are almost through these, what I would call wear indicators. There's still a little bit left on them. I honestly don't know, does that translate to 1,000 miles, 5,000 miles, 10,000, you know, I don't know that, but it's definitely not a bad idea to go ahead and replace these. And obviously this hardware as well is looking really beat up. I'm guessing that they didn't replace this when they did the brakes, and they clearly didn't grease it. Ooh. It's actually easier to take the boot off, clean the bolt, clean the boot. They should have provided replacement boots. I don't know why they didn't. It's easier to put the boot in first. It'll kind of snap into place. Then take your caliper grease, slide that. If you just push it all the way down, it will lock into place on the boot. You see the difference in the thickness there. And that's what was so that metal tab there keeps it from just sliding in nice and easy. So I'm going to put a pin that out of the way. rotate that back over. And then I'm going to take the bolt and just finger tighten it in there. 06 and newer are 27 foot-pounds. Every year prior to that, there's different settings, so I'll post that up. Then we just need to bleed them. Now, I prefer two-person bleeding, but that's the one-person method. Open it up and pump the brake and hope for the best. And then check and top off, if necessary, your brake reservoir.